Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series on YouTube. Um, and we are in 1917. So yesterday, what did we do? We finished up the short diary entries through the 22nd of November. And today we're finishing up the entire volume, which is not to say that we're skipping ahead to the end of the year, rather that Dmitri had to go out and buy another diary because he had filled up the one that we've been doing. 200 pages worth of entries, and yeah, he's finishing up. So it's a longish diary entry, but I think we'll be able to get through it. Our recap for last time, we had a couple of mystery figures, a woman, Sister Yosiliani, who was there in Tehran for just one day, and a fellow named Pavel Mikhailovich Snitkin. Both of them Dmitri obviously knew from before the revolution, but because of that, he doesn't describe who they are, or were, I should say. I'm quite certain neither of them is still among the living. Yeah, they were passing through, as were some officers who had come for a little mini holiday from Kazvin up north, and they were enjoying being away from territory that bordered on Bolshevik-held land. So there was lots of movement at that time, just lots of movement of people coming and going through Tehran, crossing the border into Persia. One of those people was Korsakov, this very young lieutenant who brought letters for Dmitri, whom Dmitri also talked about in those diary entries. And more importantly, you had the three-man deputation from the commander of the Caucasian Army, General Przhevalsky. And so we've been talking about them, and we're going to be talking about them again today. If you happen to be in a gloomy mood as you're watching this, then you will find this particular diary entry suits your mood very well, because Dmitri is having one of his bouts of depression, quite understandably. So let's get going. Yesterday, Thursday, 23rd November, was the birthday of my host's oldest daughter, little Yvonne. She's 5. To mark this solemn occasion, there was a children's party at which almost the entire English colony was present, and masses of invitees from outside. It was fun to see how the children reacted to the event. They were entertained by a Persian magician who, I must give him credit, was remarkably clever. I myself found him interesting. Then there was a puppet show with marionettes, very funny and outstandingly done. It filled the children with indescribable delight and joy, but I personally couldn't really laugh. I felt so oppressed and dismal. I had just spoken with Colonel Kharitonov from the Caucasian delegation, and what he said, despite the fact that England had satisfied every wish of the deputation, was far from cheerful! He was the source of the thoughts that upset me! Apparently there is no unity in the Caucasus, no unified will or head, just all these separate governments. Under the circumstances, the mission of the Caucasian deputation can be considered completely pointless, because if there is no unity at such a critical moment, there probably never will be. Then other information arrived that depressed me very much. Apparently, Ensign Krylenko has occupied Stavka and taken over the high command. Our vice consul in Enzeli forwarded his telegram. It says, "Stavka liquidated, tomorrow I take over." Then sad news also arrived from the Caucasian front. Apparently, the infantry there has entered into negotiations with the Turks, and the Turkish High Command has agreed to a temporary truce up until the talks get started. It's clear that if this is true, then one has to abandon all hope for the present of any Caucasian relationship with or support from England. Marling received a telegram from the English War Ministry saying that on the Russian front, Lenin's promise of peace and land is winning more and more troops over to the maximalist side. I guess that was to be expected. But I had unwittingly consoled myself with the thought that love of country and common sense would prevent that from happening. Now I have to concede that there is among us no such love of country, no chivalrous feelings toward our allies. Now we are a realm of boorishness, a realm of vice and abasement, and there remains little hope that we will be able to emerge from this current situation. I am forced to conclude this book with feelings of sorrow and pain, to say nothing of personal agitation, because I tremble with fear for my loved ones. No exclamation point. I tremble with fear for my loved ones. There are rumors that Papa has been arrested again, exclamation point. If only they wouldn't touch him. Felix and Purishkevich have both been arrested and even locked up in the Peter and Paul fortress. Oh God, if only the Lord God would save my father. And in addition to these painful personal issues, I am frightened for the motherland, frightened for the future of Russia. No, alas, exclamation point, there is no apparent light at the end of the tunnel, and I have to close this book with a painful feeling that we Russians are traitors. Talk of a separate peace is growing stronger, and the only thing that remains is hope in the Lord, that he will watch over us. All right. Very touching, I think, and you can see easily what a state of depression he's in, the poor fellow. Okay, so the birthday party, that's a nice thing, he clearly enjoyed it, although he couldn't really cheer him up. So Ivan Marling, it's the name Yvonne. She would, I think her surname as an adult when she got married would be Rodman, maybe. And she and Dmitri would stay in touch. He really was integrated into the family. The Marlings had 3 other children. One of them would die, unfortunately, at a very young age. And what was Dmitri's relationship to children in general? Well, if you watch the videos for the 1906 diaries, you know that he just could not stand badly behaved children. Even as a child himself, even as an adolescent himself, he had a really strong negative reaction to children who misbehaved. But otherwise, he liked children, and obviously he had fun. He says he had fun here, just watching how the children were enjoying themselves. All right, so the situation in the Caucasus, exactly as he describes it. People scrambling to fill the power vacuum left by the end of the Russian Empire. A lot of nationalities that had longed for independence for a long time. You had Georgians and Armenians, and you had Uzbekistan. And it's hard to be organized and coordinate across different nationalities and that sort of thing anyway. So it's not at all surprising that there was this general state of disunity. And Dmitri, given the mood he's in, is being very pessimistic. There probably never will be. If there isn't now, there probably never will be. I can't comment on that because I haven't done enough reading lately on the Civil War. Was there a government in the Caucasus? I know Wrangel formed a government. I'm not sure, but he certainly is pessimistic. And then he's just shocked by this telegram. I don't blame him because he had misinformation that made things sound a lot better. So this telegram sent by Krylenko, So he was, I believe, only an ensign in the army. He wasn't a military man. But when General Dukhonin, who was the supreme commander of Russian forces, was forced out of his position because he refused to consider a separate peace, the person who took over was, a party man, not really a military man, this Krylenko. And so he sent this telegram, this very blunt telegram: Stavka liquidated, tomorrow I take over. So that's not very promising for someone like Dmitri, who thinks, we must be true to our allies, and we must continue the war. So yeah, and the other thing, as I said, is that Dmitri had misinformation. He'd heard that Dukhonin was still the supreme commander. Dukhonin by that time was dead, but Dmitri had said that news of his death was only rumor, and that in fact he was still in his place. So this is, a really sharp disappointment. Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, it's like that, I think, in all our lives, but this is on a much, a much grander but also graver scale. Everything is piling up. Just a few days after the British had made this tentative agreement to fund and support the Russian Caucasian army, Dmitri finds out that the infantry part of the Caucasian army, I don't know why just the infantry or how that could happen, but he specifies the infantry had made peace with the Bolsheviks. Had made peace with the Turks. And yeah, there you go. That's a separate peace. The British were, and the other allies were at war with the Turks, but the Caucasian army had now made peace with the Turks. So, as he says, that renders this whole deal with England pointless. Well, again, I haven't read enough about these going-ons to know if that was actually the case. I actually should have run it by AI quickly. But certainly to get that news was just crushing for Dmitri and for like-minded people. Then the news that is being sent to Sir Charles from Britain, from London, some intelligence for him, that the maximalist, the Bolshevik program is proving to be very popular. People are jumping on the bandwagon because of these promises that were made that would never be fulfilled. They were naively taken at face value. The peace part of it would be fulfilled. That the soldiers could come home, that Russia would withdraw from the war. On the other hand, they were just going to be thrown into the Civil War. The other thing is land, that all the land would be given to the people. All the land would be given to the peasants. And that was a generational dream. That was a dream that went back centuries. And it was quite naive of them to believe it, but they believed it, and they signed on with that in mind. So what's Dmitri's response to that? Well, it means that love of country and common sense weren't sufficient. They weren't sufficiently strong. So, he writes that with bitterness. I understand that. I think, I don't want to get political, but some people in my own country these days have similar feelings. What happened to people's real love for their country, and what happened to common sense? So, fair questions. It's interesting the way he puts things. Otherwise, no chivalry toward the Allies. So chivalry, what does that mean? Honor, loyalty. We are now a country of boorishness, vice, and abasement. The boorishness and the vice are a little surprising. Boorishness comes from a word that I find very difficult to translate. You know, any of you native Russian speakers who also speak English who want to weigh in on this, you're more than welcome. So the idea is that the Russian word is chamstva, and it comes from the biblical figure of Ham, son of Noah, who burst into his father's tent when his father was drunk and naked and possibly, you know, up to some vice himself. And this was not just bad form. It was so it was so shocking to Noah and so embarrassing that he put this, you know, curse on his son and his son's descendants. Yeah, overreacting there a little bit, Dad. But anyway, the word that I translate, boorishness, comes from that idea of hamstva, from doing something like Ham does. So, yeah, interpret that as you will. And then again, just like Dmitri says, well, there will never be unity in the Caucasus. He's now saying that there's very little hope of Russia emerging from this chaotic state. Okay, the personal news, as usual, he saves that for the end. Paul has been arrested a second time. Again, I haven't done the research I should have. I don't know. I think Paul was continuously under arrest. He was under arrest under the provisional government. Maria did not succeed in getting him released, and then under arrest again under the Bolsheviks. I don't know. Maybe I guess it would make sense that when the provisional government failed, that he would technically be no longer under arrest, but the interval between that and the Bolsheviks consolidating their power and arresting him again would be pretty short. Anyway, it explains why Dmitri was more relaxed in the past when he was talking about his father and these letters he got from his father, because he didn't believe his father was still under arrest. Now he knows otherwise. As for Felix and Purishkevich, well, they were two of the other, Felix Yusupov and I think it was Vladimir Purishkevich, they were two of the other people involved in the Rasputin assassination, and they, like the other two, Lazavert and what was the other guy's name? Sukhotin, I think. None of them were ever punished. I mean, Felix was put under house arrest on one of his country estates. Dmitri was the only one that suffered any real consequences. And the reason for that was not that he was more guilty than the others, or that, you know, he was considered more responsible than the others. The reason for that was because if they had put him in jail, actually, if they had put the other conspirators in jail, but Dmitri specifically, because he was such a public figure, there might have been unrest. There might have been an uprising, because this act of killing Rasputin was extremely popular. So if they had shot him, or if they had thrown him in jail, that would not have gone down well. That would have created a popular response against the government. The other fear was that he would be at the head of a palace coup, and that he would take over from Nicholas. He was much more popular, and he would become Russia's emperor. So for that reason, Nicholas had to get him away from European Russia and out to, you know, Kazvin, a backwater. Had to get him out there as quickly as possible. Anyway, Dmitri himself will be talking about those issues and the issue of palace coup very soon. In December 1917, he will be discussing those things in his diaries. Anyway, I do not believe, I'm almost 100% sure that neither Felix or Purishkevich were ever put in the Peter and Paul fortress. I don't have a copy of Felix Yusupov's first volume of memoirs at hand here, but I've definitely read it. I'm pretty sure he was never in the Peter and Paul Fortress, and that Purishkevich wasn't either. Purishkevich remained in Russia and died in 1918 of typhus, and Felix, as you know, got out. Anyway, after talking about these people whom he knows and loves, he goes on to talk again about his fear for Russia. This is the main issue. My loved ones, of course, I'm very worried about, but this is the main issue. What's going to happen to Russia? And we are now regarded as traitors. We are traitors. So a painful feeling. I have to close this book with a painful feeling that we Russians are traitors. He doesn't say that other people see us as traitors. This, as I've said before, is very much the viewpoint and the worldview of a general staff officer, even though Dmitri was not a general staff officer. He's going to give me a heart attack one of these days. Duke! And as you can see, there's an interesting thread of religious thought here, and not the new thought stuff where if you think positive thoughts, then you will affect an actual change in the course of events, but the traditional Orthodox faith that he's falling back on when he's really depressed. Please God, save my father, save Russia. All right. And, you know, I think this was a formative experience for Dmitri. Maybe he was always a pessimist, as melancholy personality types tend to be. But, you know, this experience, I think, really determined that he would continue to be a realist. When he was in exile, when he was in the emigration in France and Britain, so many people were rejoicing in so many instances. Oh, things have turned in our favor with the Civil War and other things. Dmitri never, he would express some hope, but he would never jump on the bandwagon. He would never, you know, walk down the primrose path. He remained a realist. These disappointments in 1917 had just been far too bitter for him to ever go back to letting his hopes soar. All right, so I've talked far too long this time. What do we have next time? Well, as it turns out, we have a big question mark, because this is where the translation that I did years ago of this volume of diaries, this is where it ends. I have not translated the next volume, so what that means is I'm going to have to go off to our local public library with my microfilm reel of Dmitri's diaries and digitize it myself and do a translation on that basis. I can tell you that the next volume of diaries is absolutely fascinating because, you know, we start out with almost immediately, we're in November now, so we'll be in December, and almost immediately we'll be starting out with what Dmitri has to say about the Rasputin assassination. The most that he ever said, the most that he ever put down on paper is in that 1917 diary for December. But there's going to be some lag time. I definitely can't do it tomorrow. Hopefully I can do it on Thursday, but even when after I've done the digitization, I'm still going to have to do the translation, not all at once, but on a daily basis. So yeah, hopefully I will get going on that on Thursday, and I'll also have some other text for you while I'm working on that. And so, you know, yeah, look for something hopefully on Thursday, and I hope to see you then. Bye.